necessarily have right at the forefront of your mind, but when you're finished and maybe you didn't get what you expected, it's just a kind of, I found it just a neat way to visualize where you stand with a particular candidate and what action you need to take next to get that candidate to get moving. So when we talk about being able to persuade a candidate to get their path moving, a lot of times people think you just got this word track, and I'm just going to say, oh, doc, you do this, you do that, and they're going to respond. And persuasion, it doesn't work that way. All right. It really starts from empathy and empathetic listening. All right. We have to get people talking to us, and we have to figure out where they are coming from. A lot of times I hear people say that I gave them this fact, I told them this, I told them that, I told them this, and they're not responding to it. All right. And that's because doctors, clients, everybody that we're dealing with, as much as we think facts sell, they really make their decisions on emotions. All right. So the key to persuasion isn't necessarily what you're going to say, but it's what you hear from the person you're talking about. It begins with you, the listener, not them, the speaker. All right. When we want to persuade somebody, we need to know where they're coming from. We need to know what gets them emotionally invested, what gets their oxytocin running through their brain. All right. When you listen and you really hear what they're saying, you're going to get more from that people. All right. People, when they feel heard, they're more likely to trust you. Then they're more open to your ideas, and then they're going to be more open to be persuaded by you. All right. Listening, empathetic listening, empathy. I've read this 3 or 4 times. It's the bridge to influence. You cannot influence somebody that doesn't trust you. They have to trust you. They have to believe. Now, that doesn't mean you got to be their best buddy. That doesn't mean, you have to know everything about them down to what kind of dog food they're feeding their dog. All right. What it means is in the course of the phone call or multiple phone calls, whatever they're trying to push, they need to feel like you're hearing it. All right. And that doesn't mean you agree with it. And that doesn't mean you're necessarily even going to take action on everything that they're saying. But they have to feel like you have heard them, that you're listening to them, and that you are creating a situation where they can tell you openly and honestly what they believe in. How do you get to that point is really the key then, all right? How do we get somebody to feel like I'm listening to them, and how do I get them to go from, all right, well, I'm listening, what do I do from there? I read this book, and actually Sammy, I don't know if she's on here, is reading this book right now. It's called Crucial Conversations. And it furthers the idea of what they call AMPP: ask, mirror, paraphrase, and prime. All right, these are all 3 of the 4 you should really utilize in every conversation. The 4th one is prime is to go back if you need more. So the first thing that we want to do, ask. It sounds simple, right? It's the easiest, it's the most straightforward way to encourage people. Why are you looking for a new job? What are you looking for in a new job? How do I improve about your current situation? These are all questions that we want to be asking. And there's, I just put these up as not necessarily these are the questions that you need to necessarily ask every time, but they're good questions that will get people talking to you. And then my favorite thing, what are 3 things you absolutely need to have in your new job? And get them to tell you, like, there's all this noise out there, and they can tell you 50 things they want, but there's not going to be 50 things that really are going to move the needle for them. All right. You want to really ask them and ask them again to get it down to what is really important to them. While after they're talking, you want to mirror them. All right. You kind of want to, they describe it as holding up a mirror. I'm hearing that you're telling me this and this, so give them feedback about how you're perceiving what they are saying to you. If they a lot and they're not, you could be like, hey, I'm hearing you tell me this, but I'm kind of getting the feeling that, there's something else you're not telling me. And make them aware of that you are really listening to them, and you're trying to give them feedback so that they will feel safe and speak to you openly and honestly about what's going on. If we're going to talk to a lot of candidates that, maybe they got fired, maybe they lost their privileges. They're not going to want to tell you that, right? So you need to be like, hey, I feel like there's something you're not telling me here. And let them know, like, hey, I'm here to get you a job. I don't, whatever your situation is, that's what it is. I need to know what we're dealing with so I can do the job for you. So you really want to give them that kind of feedback and be calm and cool about it. You don't want them to, you don't want them to feel like you're judging. You don't want them to feel like you're rushing them. You want them to really talk to you. And then as you do that, people like talking about themselves, especially doctors. If you can get them to really be comfortable and feel safe to talk to you, they will just open up and they will talk and eventually probably have to cut them off. You'll have learned what you need to learn, so you're going to need to figure out how to cut them off. But people do like talking about themselves. So if you make it easy for them to talk about themselves to you, you're going to learn so much about that person. And Jeremiah kind of stole my thunder a little bit about this one earlier this week when his repeating back the conversation. But this is a crucial part of a conversation, and that is to paraphrase. All right. You need to, after you've gotten the information you need, you repeat back to the person you're talking about what the important parts of that conversation are. Now, there's two thoughts on this one. I've used both of them, and I feel that either one of them is good. Some people will say use their own words back at them. Again, going back to the people like they like themselves. If you use their words back at them, it sounds natural to them. It sounds like it sounds like something, they're just going to gravitate to it. But other people say that you should use your own words and take your version of what you've heard and paraphrase it back to them in your own words. And the reason being there is it shows you were listening. You're not them. You're somebody different. But you were listening. You were paying attention. And that's going to resonate with that person. So I encourage the next time you paraphrase to somebody, try both ways and see what gets you the best reaction. And maybe depending on the person you're talking to. Like I said, I don't really have one is better than the other. That might that might be the end of the conversation for you at that point. You may have what you need starting right there. However, you may paraphrase and you hear this long pause or this kind of or something along that lines. And that's going to tell you that you don't have the whole picture, and that's where you need to prime. And priming is where you go back to the person and You get them to open up more. You kind of go back to the beginning and get them to tell you what they're not telling you. Again, in our instance, a lot of times this is going to be the why are they looking for a job? A lot of times they haven't really given you the whole story, and there's something that they've omitted, and that's something, maybe it's a really big deal. Maybe it's a bigger deal in their own mind. We don't know. It doesn't really matter to us, but we need to know what it is, because that barrier is going to affect what we can do with the candidate, whether it's their perception or whether it's, seriously something they don't. One way to get them to open up further to you is to seek a mutual purpose with them. Make this our search, or, we're going to go find you candidates. We're going to go find you some new jobs, right? We're in this together. I'm going to go out and I'm going to do this. I'm going to find these different jobs. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And we're going to get you this opportunity that you can start in 2 months and you're going to be thrilled with. Or maybe they're like, nah, it's not really what I want. Then you got to come up with a whole new strategy and go back, come up with something new for them that's going to get them excited and be like, yeah, this is what we need to do, and be on board with it. The whole goal here is you want to have an empathetic conversation that is going to give you your marching orders on what you need to do for this candidate, so that when you come back to this candidate, you can present what you've done in a way that they're on board. And you don't have to try and sell them that they want to go to North Carolina and you're trying to get them to go to North Dakota because you misunderstood what they want. All right. The idea here is listen to them, get the important points to them, and use that information. Now, what I'm not saying is, say they do want to go to North Carolina. What I'm not saying is you're going to pin yourself where you're only going to be looking at, say, Central North Carolina, right? That may or may not be the most important thing. We may have, other things about their job search that's going to want us or necessitate us to expand their parameters, right? And we want to do that as much as we can possibly do that, because it's in our best interest to find as many opportunities for this candidate, or it's in our best interest to be able to present as many candidates to our client as possible, right? So we need to be able to have some things that we can come back to that's going to have this person we're talking to be like, oh yeah, you're right, we do want to do that. So how do we do that? Well, actually, I got to come back. Anchoring. A lot of
Hey, Dave, can I jump in for a quick second?
Yeah.
Just real briefly, going back to the kind of paraphrasing section here, I feel like a really effective way to figure out what you're missing is to literally ask them that. You paraphrase back to them what you've heard them say. That way, like you said, they know you've paid attention, you've taken good notes. I can't tell you how many times I've done that, and they've literally told me, oh, you take really good notes. And then I'll say, I just want to make sure, is there anything that I'm missing? Is there anything maybe we haven't talked about that's really important for me to understand about your search, or your family being involved in this search that is going to help me to identify better matches for you? And just try to give them like an open-ended question that then oftentimes can feed into them talking about something that we just didn't get to, or I forgot to ask, or they didn't bring up at the time. So I think just that really straightforward, like, hey, am I missing anything here that's critical for me to understand? I just want to make sure I'm on the right track. Some version of that gives them an opportunity to jump back into it and share something that maybe they didn't initially. Thanks, Dave.
And I would even add to that too, that if it's your opportunity to tell them if anything changes, to let you know as well, because that gives you a chance to say, we've got jobs all over, and if anything does changes in their search, please get that to you as well. So,
given that, One thing that I was going to come back to this one, but this is actually a good place for this reciprocity. All right. When you are first trying to get somebody to talk to you, they don't know you. You need to give them a reason to trust you. And what we can do is we use reciprocity. We hear this a lot. Should I tell them where this job is? Should I tell them, what this doctor has, who this place is? Or should I wait until, I've got their CV and then give it to them? And I would tell you that you should tell them where that job is. All right? Because when you give somebody something, they feel compelled to give back to you. All right. A lot of places will call it strategic indebtedness. We've given them something of value. All right. We told them where the job is. We've told them some details about the job. We've given them value for their time on the phone. Right? Now, for giving them that value, they are going to be more inclined to give you something of value. And there's, the things that they can give you of value is continuing the discussion, giving you their CV, maybe not giving you a whole bunch of crap about where you're going to send that CV to. Okay. You've fostered a sense of goodwill with them. All right. And that builds trust. That builds loyalty. And that encourages them to give something back to you. All right, something of value back to you, which in our case is the further of the discussion. So use the jobs. That's our value. That's what we bring to the table for these candidates. Tell your clients about. That's why we send the names. We send the names. Here's the name of this candidate. So our clients, that's the value to our clients. So we give the person you're talking to something of value, and they'll give back to you. I've been doing this for 30-something years, and I only know of one instance where a doctor went to a job directly that I told them about. And in that particular instance, it was a community health system job. They were being community health system. And when I told them hey, he reached out to you because I told you about this job. And they were able to look at when I sent the name clear, which was while I was talking to him, and when he reached out to him, and they gave me credit for it. So you're not cutting yourself off by giving them something of value. All right. In fact, you're giving them something that's going to bring returns to yourself. So think about it. And there's other things too, but if you think about what value can you give this person you're talking to that in turn is going to get something in value back to you. One of the ways we can do this is what they call anchoring. And I watched a video last night, and he was talking about how like Louis Vuitton and all these high-end luxuries, how they set this anchor. And what they do is you'll have a $400,000 handbag in a store, but they won't sell it to you because they're out of stock, or that's reserved for people there. But then they'll turn around and they'll show you a $70,000 handbag that looks just as nice, and now your perceived value is that this bag is really valuable. It looks pretty much just as nice, but it's $70,000, not $400,000. All right, we can set those kind of anchors too, right? Whether it be the candidate's expectation for what the new job is going to be. I come back to, finding out and paraphrasing from the candidates what they're looking for in a job, right? If we can make those, call is 1 in 3 or better, income's going to be 250 or higher, and it's got to be, within 200 miles of this city. It's a pretty easy anchor. Anything we find in that is going to be within their value statement, and they're going to want to talk to you about it. So set the anchor with your client candidates. With clients, they're going to say, oh, we want board certified, we want 5 years experience, we want them to have this license, we want this and this and that. All right, well, that's not necessarily feasible on our end. So let's get their expectations of what kind of candidates we're going to be presenting back to them at a reasonable level, so that when we come at them, maybe we get them like, hey, I don't know that we can find this person that already has a license. But then we go out and we find somebody and say they had the license. The value of that candidate in the client's mind is going to be much higher, right? Because we told them, I don't know if that's even possible, but then we deliver on it. So now this, rather than just another run-of-the-mill candidate, you've presented as somebody who's already got the license, and that's going to make that candidate seem much, much better in their eyes. When we do that, these anchors can distort evaluations. You can minimize defaults, meaning there is no perfect job. All right. If we let people nitpick every single point of every single job, they're going to find something wrong with it. It's just a fact. All right. But if you get this anchor and you'd be like, this job's got A, B, and C that you told me you had to have. All right. Then these other things become negotiable. They become easier to overlook. Heck, you may not even have to talk about it. Right. If you've got these main points all lined up and you bring the job back to the candidate and you're like, hey, you said you want 1 in 4 call. I got you 1 in 4 call. You wanted to be within 200 miles of Raleigh. I got you within 50 miles. You wanted 250 and I'm getting you 275. Now that's a value statement to your candidate. They're going to take notice. They're going to listen. All right. And we want to be able to bring our jobs back to our candidates in such a manner that they feel you're bringing them something better than the expectation you set with them, better than the anchor that you set with them. All right. It's also, let's say you get 3 job related things that's most important to this candidate, call, money, and I got to do some kind of procedure, right? Well, if location's not one of those anchors, then we can go anywhere. And as long as that job's got those 3 things, we can bring it back to the candidate. Now, they quite likely are going to be like, yeah, I know I said that, but I don't really want to go here. So that is, likely to happen. In which case, maybe we didn't have the right three things, so we can go back to the beginning and really try and set a new anchor. But if we can get them to buy in, then we don't have to worry about every detail of the job. We don't have to worry about the things that aren't perfect with the job, and we can really then take that information and then shop them around to as many places as possible and get as many jobs on board for them as we can possibly get, which gives us the upper hand in getting them placed. Does anybody have any questions? When you're talking with people, have you ever noticed if you are giving somebody a bunch of stats, how their eyes glaze over? They're kind of like, all right. If you're just reading down, if you're just reading a list of how, like my favorite is the HR people that give us physician job descriptions, right? And it requires you to stand on your feet for 8 hours and be able to lift 25 pounds and be able, you can just see, they're not even listening to you anymore. And that's because people don't think in terms of information. They think in terms of narratives. All right. People like a good narrative. People like a good story. All right? The facts tell, the stories sell. All right. So when we're talking about a job, when we're talking about a candidate, you want to tell it in a narrative form. You want to tell it like a story, paint a picture. Hey, doctor, you're in this job and they're doing this and they're doing that. And we discussed how if we could find X, Y, and Z, that this would be something that you'd be really interested in and would get you set up on your career. So now, hey, I just talked to so-and-so and they've got this job over here. And here's what's cool. It's got this. So, we don't have to worry about this part of it. And it's got this. So we've got this covered for you. And top it off, they're bringing up, 50 grand more than you and I talked about. So, here's a place where we can get you from this really crappy situation into a much better job. By the way, it's right over here and they'd like to talk to you. Right? You kind of glossed over, what's not important and really got them seeing, you're trying to present this in such a way so that they can see themselves talking to these people. They can see themselves interviewing with these people, and hopefully they can see themselves taking this job because you present it in a narrative form that gets them emotionally invested. The way I just presented that is that they call that the conflict resolution art. All right. You start what you want to sell them on with what's the problem, what's the conflict, why are we here in the first place, and present the information in such a way that it solves that problem. All right, so we want to get our people we're talking to go from I'm here and I want to be here. So when you present a job to them, you want to present it in such a way that it gets them to where they want to be. It resolves the conflict that they're dealing with. All right. When you do it that way, again, you don't have to know every last detail about the job. You just need to know enough to solve their problem and get them from point A to point B. Right? They're going to have other questions, but hey, what's the way we get their question solved? You're right. That's a great question. Let me get you on the phone with so-and-so over here. She'll take care of this all for you. Right? The most important thing here is I got a job that you can get into and you're not going to be miserable anymore. You're going to enjoy being a doctor again. Yeah. This is, so we really got to get people thinking in terms of the movement and not so much what each little individual fact is. We can negotiate anything. If we've got somebody that is a good match and they're gung-ho about it and our client's gung-ho about them, I think anybody that will tell you that we can negotiate the rest of it. So think about presenting things in a more of a story or a narrative form. And you'll see that you get a lot more buy-in from the candidates. And, if you have to, you can text the story to them or, you can send them an email if you need to. But this is really more effective when you talk to them. I mean, it's really, you're talking, you're getting their brain chemistry going, you get them excited. And when you get them excited and they get that warm and fuzzies, then that's when you've done your job and you can get things moving forward. When you're writing an email that you're going to send out, think about writing that email in a narrative form, all right? I mean, you have your opening paragraph, like, what is the sellable point on this one? Are you stuck in this dead-end job and you're tired of working for HCA? How about coming to a private practice? Look at this. This private practice offers A, B, C, D, E, right? If you want to get out of this situation you're in and into some place where you're going to walk in and the CEO is going to know your face, then you need to give me a call and talk about this job, right? Present these things not so just rigid, but present them in a way that people can see themselves doing it. And you're going to have you're going to just see people buy into what you want from them a lot more. Now, when we get to the actual getting them to do what we need them to do, not any one of these things is going to do the job by itself. You need to start with the listening, you need to paraphrase, and we need to build their trust. You need to give them something. You need to set your anchor. All of these things, work together so that you can then confidently go and say, hey, you know what you need to do? You need to take this job. And if you've done your job with all this other stuff, they're going to say, yeah, you're right. I think you're right. This is the job that makes the most sense. All right. And I don't think you can ever expect to get all of this perfect with every single call. So that's, I'm not trying to imply that, but if you can take these ideas and really try and implement them, I think you can see like you're not going to get ghosted as much. You're not going to have a situation where they're like, I know you told me that this job's got everything, but it's just not what I want. And then you're like, well, what the heck? Why not? These kinds of things they still happen because, we have limited interactions, right? We're just trying to do the best we can. So, but if we try and use these ideas every single time and we get them, a higher percentage, then more often than not, you're going to know what you really need to do, what you really need to say to them to close the deal. And there's a whole nother universe of things you can talk about on the actual closing, and that's not really where I wanted to get to today. Today is more like how do you build up to the close. So hopefully I've given you some ideas that you can use. I've got the resources that I can tell you where a lot of this comes from. Books, mostly, there's a lot of books out there. There's YouTube videos. You can take any of these concepts and do some additional research. And this is our craft. It really benefits you to take this information, go out and read up on it more and learn about it more and get better at it. Because it will improve your recruiting skills. And what's really kind of interesting is the next time you walk into, if you care to go into a high-end store, you'll see that these are the things that they're doing to you. It's kind of, you walk into a car lot, these are the things they're doing to you. And you'll be like, I know what you're doing. and maybe you won't get sold as easily, or you'll be able to push back. So it's good stuff, and it does work. And you can find 100 books that are going to call these ideas different things. Like Peter came in, and we were just talking earlier, and he had a different name, neuro something. But it's the same concepts, just different people use different words for it. So I hope this helps out, and I'll open up if anybody's got any questions.
So we went shopping for a vacuum cleaner, and that's exactly what they did. There's some vacuum cleaner in town, vacuum like appliance store on the east side, and that's exactly how they presented it, Dave. And I don't know why. There's not like they don't really disclose price tags, but they show the high end stuff. And then Allie, my wife, she was about to not negotiate at all, you guys, whatsoever. And I said, sweetie, let me talk to the salesman just for a little bit. And she was like, can I wait outside? Because I cringe. I cringe when you do this. And I do it every time. And she was going to pay $580 out the door. And when I was done with the guy, we walked out $500 out the door. So that's exactly what they did, though. It was such a setup. I just wanted to say that real quick.
But it worked because at the end of the day, you still walked out of there paying $500 for a vacuum
I feel
cleaner.
like they got me still. Or my wife did, actually.
So.
Was it a Dyson?
No, it has 2 R's on there, and it's not Rolls Royce.
One thing that I want to add too, though, about the anchoring, I think the anchoring is a really huge concept. I built a lot of wealth off anchoring, and that is a substantive improvement of their anchor situation. Um, when you have somebody that's a resident physician, they 100% have to get a job. So the job that you get them is going to be better than the job that they have right now, 100% of the time. Residents are making 50, 40, 60, $80,000 a year if they're lucky while they're training. And so you're going to improve their job situation 100% of the time when they're a resident. So you could take assumptive actions based upon what you already know about them. You know that they're willing to interview in, say, a small community in upstate New York that you would consider maybe a top 22%, or maybe when I say 22%, I mean there's 60, that would be what, 78% of the communities are better than a 22% community. So when you know that and you got buy-in to a 22% community, you could jump it up to any of those, say, other 78% communities that you know as a physician recruiter and as a professional that are better, and take action many times, as long as it's not complete waste of time. And like Dave was saying, Doc wants North Carolina and you're sending to North Dakota, don't do that. But in North Carolina, in South Carolina, maybe push some parameters, push some envelopes. And so I use that a lot when you establish those anchors to just improve upon them. And I ask for forgiveness instead of permission many times when I know that I could go back to the candidate and say, hey, I got your CV out to this job because you said yes to this 22% community. You've already got an interview set up. And here's why I made the decision to send your CV to this job. It's because it's a 48% community. It's paying 40K more than the job we've already got you into. They are ready to interview you next week, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, on down the line. And you could do that throughout your process with all your candidates once you have that anchor established. The key is establishing that anchor point and finding out where you can improve upon it. And many times you could do this right at the ad response phase, especially with resident physicians and fellows that you absolutely know you're going to be putting them into a job that's better than the job they have right now.
And to Jerry's point too, it's, I think I don't recall ever placing a candidate where it was a lateral move. It seems like when you're always looking for an improvement on their situation, and they could not be working, and so any job's an improvement. But I try to avoid as much as possible any lateral moves. If I see a job that is no improvement whatsoever, unless the doctor says, yeah, I'm totally interested. If I could identify this as a lateral move, I'll avoid it immediately. Always looking for the improvement on their situation. And then, like I think Dave mentioned earlier, asking the questions to identify what's important to them to find out what would be an improvement. Doesn't necessarily always have to be money. There's many different things in their definition that could be an improvement on what they're doing. And so by asking the right questions, by listening to what they're saying, and knowing what those trigger points are for the improvement on what they're currently in, and then find that improvement, not the lateral move.
If you go back to the original, if you know where they're at and how they would like to see themselves in a year, that gives you a lot of leeway to work with and a lot of room to work. If you know what they don't like about their current job and just an idea of how to improve upon that, that gives us a lot of jobs that can improve upon it. And from there, a lot of it comes back to how you phrase. When you tell them about the job, you have to say, I'm improving, you not say I'm improving upon your situation, but implied in how you respond to them has got to be, this is better than what you have because this is why you should talk to them because, and if you hit those pain points, they'll hardly ever say no, don't you think, Jerry? So a lot of it's just how you communicate with these people. And again, and if they trust you, they're going to give you more leeway. They're going to give you a lot longer leash to run with if they trust you. So that gaining that trust in the beginning is very important. Anybody else got anything? All right. Well, thank you for coming. I appreciate it. This is something I like talking about, so I was excited to do this one, and even brushed off my PowerPoint skills that I haven't used in a long time.
Oh, that's great. Well done, Whitty.
Yeah, nice work,
Dave.
Dave.
Thank you, Dave.
That was excellent.
That was a good
Yeah,
one.
thanks, Dave, for the presentation. Awesome wealth of knowledge, and look forward to Chris Frederickson next week. And as always, guys, if you have questions, I know Dave had 45 minutes to cram this in, so quite a bit more that could be expanded on this. Please, whether it's myself, Dave, or your managers, and some follow-up questions on this, or just additional discussion, please go to me, Dave, or them. And if you guys have time, please do fill out the survey. Need to get some more surveys from everyone, just sort of feedback and additional ideas from everyone. So, and saying that, I hope everyone has a awesome, wonderful weekend, and we will see
Thank
you
you,
guys next
guys.
week.
Thanks, Dave.
Here,
Thanks,
everyone.
Jeremiah.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremiah. Thanks, Dave.
Jeremiah,
Appreciate
where
you
are you
guys.
at right now?
Yep.
What's in the background? You're not in the car anymore, are you?
We
I
are
know, where
the
do you stop
family.
at?
The family's having breakfast. Well, we're at a place called Toby's in Hinckley, Minnesota, that has like the most awesome bakery. Everyone with the pastries, but the bakery is
Wait a
like
minute.
off the charts.
What?
So
That
this is
your
a-
physique doesn't say pastry. It doesn't. It says like lettuce and carrots, dude.
oh, I'm like drooling over the pastries. I'm not actually consuming the pastries. I'm just good. I'm going there to vicariously
That
live
makes
for the
sense.
folks
That
eating the
makes sense.
pastries.
Well, hey man, you guys
That's
have so
great.
much fun, dude. I'll see you when you get back.
Yep.
All right,
Enjoy
see
your
you
trip,
guys.
man. Yep.
Thanks, guys.
Peace.
See ya.